Hello everyone! Today we're going to practice translating algebraic equations. So, just like we can translate between English and Spanish and French and any other language, we can translate between a written or verbal statement and a math sentence. So, the first thing we want to know is that anytime we have an unknown value, so a number that we don't know what it is, we are going to use a variable to replace it. Another really important thing we are going to want to keep in mind are these two switch words. So if we have the word than or from, that is going to mean we're going to be switching the order of some things. So for example, if we have more than, less than, subtracted from, those are all things where we're going to be switching some orders around, and you'll see examples of that as we go. All right, let's take a look at some key words and what they mean. So remember that for adding, our big fancy math word is to find the sum, right? Would tell us to add. But we could also see add, plus, increase, more, total. Those are some common ones we'll see. For subtraction, our main word is difference, but we could also see subtract, minus, decrease, less, or take away. Multiplication, we talk about a product, finding the product. Obviously, if we say multiply, we're talking about multiplication. Of is often used with fractions. If I say 2/5 of, 1/10 of, right? We're taking that fraction and multiplying it by the number. Now, if I have twice something or double something, I am multiplying, but I'm multiplying by a specific number. So twice and double are both multiplied by 2. Sometimes you might see triple, so multiplying by 3. They don't usually go higher than that. Quotient is going to be division, right? Divided by, again, if we're taking half of something, we are specifically dividing it by 2, right? Half of 100, 100 divided by 2 is going to be 50. Also, if we're splitting something into groups. All right, we won't see these as often, but you might come across them. If we see something like the quantity of, right? Anytime you see that word quantity, we're going to think parentheses. So whatever the quantity is, right, is going to go inside those parentheses. Also, when we have two things kind of right next to each other, so twice the sum of, if you watch the distributing video, looks something like that, plus the difference of, right? These are all things that might have some parentheses with them. A big thing to look out for is where our equal sign is going to go. So if they just say the word is, right, this is this, right, that means an equal sign. Obviously, is equal to is the same as yields, results in. Most often, you're going to have one of those first three. Well, let's take a look at what I'm talking about with some examples together. All right, so we are going to go through word by word, just like we would do in any language. So if I see the word 3, I'm going to write the number 3. Times tells me to multiply. Here's that big one. If I see a number, that's where we're going to plug in our variable. I'm going to use X for all of these, but you could use whatever variable that you like. All right, minus tells us minus 7 equals 16. So this one's pretty straightforward. The only thing we're going to change is that we're not going to actually write out that 3 times x. Remember, in algebra, if they're multiplied, they're just right next to each other. So this will turn into 3x minus 7 equals 16, and that is how we took that written sentence and turned it into a math sentence. All right, on to number 2. Okay, so if we see half, remember that half is specifically dividing by 2. Anytime we see that a number, remember we're plugging in that variable, plus negative 12 is 19. Okay, so again, we're not going to write divided by 2x, right? We're taking that number and we're finding half of it. So that's really going to be x divided by 2, which would be like half of a number, or half of x. Plus that negative 12 equals 19. And I only put those parentheses in there just so there wasn't any confusion with that plus and minus right next to each other. One last one for this side. Let's take a look. So we have 5 less than. So 5 less tells us to subtract. And then, ding, 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 we see that than. Remember, this is our switch word. Anytime you see this, again, it's going to be with a plus or a minus. There's going to be some operation that's around. So that's going to tell us whatever comes before and whatever comes after that subtraction sign, the order is going to flip, right? So instead of it being 5 minus something, we're going to have something minus 5. Let's keep going and you'll see what that looks like. So the product tells us to multiply 8 and a number, there's our x, is equal to 20. So if I was going to write this without that switch word, right, I would have my 5 minus the product of 8 and x is just 8 times x equals 20. But because we have the switch word here, right, I have to take whatever's before and whatever is after those that subtraction sign, and we are going to flip the order. So the correct way to write this would be 8x minus 5 equals 20. All right, let's look at another one together. So number 4, how do we translate equations into words? So if they give us the equation and they want us to write a statement, right? Obviously there's going to be a million different ways that we could do this. So let's just do a basic one together. So we could say 10 is equal to, now we need a word for division. So remember, anytime I see that variable, right, I'm going to put a number. So for division, I'm going to say quotient for this time. So we'll say the quotient of a number and -2. And the last thing we have to take into account is the plus 5. So I'm going to say increased by 5. Now again, there's not one correct answer for this. There's a million different ways and a million different words that you could use to represent that same equation, but that is just one example. What you'll most likely see on a test is something more like number 5. So what we're going to do is try to find which one is going to match up perfectly with this 3x minus 8 equals 13. As soon as we get to something that does not make sense, we can cross out that answer and move on. So let's look at each one together. So A, triple a number would be 3 times, a number is our x, right? Less tells us to subtract, and then than is our switch word. So I'm going to have 3x minus, right? But now if I switch it, I'm going to have something minus 3x. But if you notice in this equation, that 3x really should come first. So because of that switch word, A is out as our option. Let's look at B. So for B, we have 8 more is going to be plus, right? So if I look at this, I don't have any addition in that problem, so I know that B is also out. Let's take a look at C. The product of 8 and a number, so product is multiplying, 8 and a number is 8x. So this one has 8 and x together, but if I look at my equation, I have 3 and x together. So C is also out, so hopefully this letter D matches up with what we want. So let's try it together. So we have 8, less is subtracting, than is our switch word. This time that works out though, right? Because I don't want 8 minus something. I want 3x minus 8. So when we have that switch word, 8 less than, triple a number, we already said was that 3 times x is equal to 13. So when I swap that order, I get exactly 3x minus 8 equals 13, which is what makes D the correct answer. And that is how we can translate between math and words and written statements, just going word by word and using all that key vocabulary. I hope you have a great day, and I will see you next time.